Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through some Week 11 IDP waiver wire pickups.
Hike!
All right, Joe. So first player we're going to be talking about here is going to be defensive end DJ Wonnum of Carolina Panthers. Joe, he's been riddled with injuries all season long, so we finally got to see his Carolina Panther debut, and boy, did he not disappoint in Germany. Going up against the New York Giants, he had a sack, a forced fumble, 2 assisted tackles, 4 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a QB hit. A guy who we saw do quite well in Minnesota, especially in his last season before he got signed. Only rostered in 35% of leagues. I have to think that this is a great performance by Wonnum, and I think he could continue to do it. So I think he's well worth the pickup. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think he's worth the pickup. I mean, we've already seen what he can do. You know, you mentioned it with the great year he had last year with the Minnesota Vikings. It'd be interesting to see. I was interested to see like how he could do it, not being with the Vikings without all the different guys that they had. You know, like a Danielle Hunter opposite of him. But right in this first game, and I know it was against the Giants, they don't have the best offensive line, but he went ahead and had a sack, also forced a fumble. Very productive, so he's definitely a guy I'd have my eye on and looking to pick up this week.
Well, they got some great matchups down the stretch here. Dallas, at Philadelphia, Tampa Bay twice. Even KC, I mean, we saw even the Broncos have quite a lot of success. That's the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line isn't that strong. So if Wonnum, and he's got a bye week too this week, so he might fly under the radar here, and he can kind of continue to rest up and be fully healthy. Yeah, he wasn't fully healthy last time, but it was his first game back. So I like Wonnum a lot. I think he's a sneaky pickup, worth a decent amount of FAAB. Maybe 5% of your FAAB, I think, if you still got it.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity. Like if you got a bench spot, you're not looking for a starter this week. I think you can go ahead and get him at a discount this week, being that he's going to be on a bye. Most people are looking for streamers and people that are going to be able to perform for him this week. So I think you could get one of them at a discount and use them in the future weeks after the bye here.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So next player we're going to be talking about here is defensive tackle Grover Stewart. Now, he may not be relevant for most of your IDP leagues if you're not in a defensive tackle league. For our league, you got to start 2. This guy has done very, very well. A guy who I think flies under the radar because of the PED suspensions. People don't think about him, but did pretty well against the Buffalo Bills. Had a sack, 4 assisted tackles, 4 solo tackles, a QB hit. What I like about Grover Stewart is he's a bigger guy, and he just has that high tackle floor. In our league, solo tackles do quite well for defensive tackles. So having that high tackle floor, the sack is a cherry on top. But if you can get a lot of tackles, you're going to be relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this guy was also just, mostly I feel like considered as a, run stopper. He's always graded out to be a really good guy to be able to stop the run. But, I mean, he's got 3.5 sacks. 3 of them have come the past 2 weeks against, the Vikings, and this past week against Buffalo, we got 1. But he's got some better matchups too. I mean, this upcoming week, he's got the Jets. I mean, they don't have the best offensive line. I think he could definitely get in there and help you. The Lions, I thought they had a good offensive line, but the Texans, man, they started to bowl them around a little bit tonight. Wonder if he could continue with him and, Buckner up front, if they could continue that against them. And then, the Patriots, who right now are grading out to be the 31st, ranked offensive line. So next few matchups are looking pretty good for the Colts, and I think Stewart's got an opportunity for you.
Next player we're going to be talking about here is linebacker Jack Gibbens of Tennessee Titans. This is an interesting one, Joe. If you kind of read the headlines here, they obviously made the trade, the Titans did, where they traded away Ernest Jones and acquired a pick in Jerome Baker. And so, my thought was, okay, Jerome Baker is going to start playing. But if you're hearing, I think it was the linebacker coach or even the head coach, I can't remember who it was now, but they basically said, like, Jack Gibbens is playing so well that they're keeping Jerome Baker off the field. The whole idea was that Jerome Baker was eventually going to take over as a starting inside linebacker and overtake a Jack Gibbens, but it hasn't happened yet because Gibbens has just been on a tear. So, but he did pretty well. 10 solo tackles, 5 assisted tackles. This Titans team is not very good. This team is down often. More likely or not, that defense is on the field. Gibbons only rostered in 26% of leagues. I think he's a good stash, a good guy to pick up. Maybe, he's not the most flashy name. Maybe you have to be a little gutsy to want to play this guy. But I think he's definitely worth the ad. I'd go pick him up. I'd say around 2 to 5%. What say you, Joe?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's worth an ad. I mean, anytime this guy's, got back-to-back, 14 tackle game against the New England Patriots and then follows it up with a 15 tackle game against the Chargers. And, let's face it, the Titans offense isn't the best. So defense is on the field a ton. I feel like Gibbons is going to continue to have those opportunities to, continue this high tackle ceiling that he's really, really setting here.
Yeah, and he's a guy who I was familiar with before. I mean, he is showing from some flashes, but linebacker is an interesting one because all of a sudden they can just be supplanted all of a sudden. So with the Jerome Baker training, I thought for sure that and he did okay in Seattle. But no, they're going to stick with Gibbons. So they're going to ride with the hot hand. That's basically from what I've heard them say is that we're going to ride the hot hand and then he's hot. So we're going to keep going with him. So until that happens, and I don't see it slowing down, I'd be going with Jack Gibbons.
Yeah, I honestly just don't think Jerome Baker's good enough either to keep Gibbons off the field. I mean, Jerome Baker's, I feel like, always been an interesting player, really helps more in the run game than anything. He's more of a downhill linebacker where, Gibbons has been doing well. I don't think Baker, if it was still Ernest Jones, that's one thing, but I don't think Baker's at the caliber of player that would unseat Gibbons at this point.
So next player we're going to be talking about here is safety Jeremy Chinn. Now, Jeremy Chinn's a guy, Joe, that showed a lot of promise in Carolina, then fell out of favor, with Matt Rule and company. Never really was the same. He was the guy that we had our eye on heading into the offseason to say, where is this guy going to go? Ended up going with the Washington Commanders in free agency. But then Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner went to Washington, and you and I both kind of soured on that. We're like, how many tackle opportunities
you more than me
gonna get? Okay, fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what, these past 2 weeks, he's been on a heater. He has played outstanding. 6 solo tackles, 7 assisted tackles, a pass deflection. Not only that, he had a fumble recovery and interception. But like I said, these past 2 weeks, he has played phenomenal. And honestly, there might have, he wasn't playing, all this percentage of the snaps. I think that's changing now. And so I think Chinn's a guy that he's only rostered in 42% of leagues. Honestly, of the players that we'll be talking about, he probably is my favorite, although all of them, honestly, have some decent upside on your roster. I'd be spending a decent amount to get Chinn, probably around 5 to 10%. I think this could be an opportunity. I don't, we talked about early on Nick Cross. He was like, okay, there were signs that you should go get this guy, and if you did, you were rewarded. You don't often get another crack at it. I think this might be it with Chinn. Yeah,
I mean, Chinn's always had all the talent in the world as well. Just like you said, fell out of the favor with the Panthers. Just don't know with the different regimes if he just wasn't a scheme fit or what. But I think, he's starting to figure out this Dan Quinn system, and, he's showing why he had a decently drafted, highly drafted player here, and his talent's starting to show out. But I think I had him as either like a sleeper or breakout pick, and you were trying to.
I think you might be right about that. Yes,
it's because of the Wagner and Louvu effect. But here we are, back-to-back 13 tackle games, added an interception this week along with a fumble recovery. So I agree with you. I think he's starting to turn it on. There could be more to come for Chinn.
That was a good memory, Joy. I think you are right. If I search back on the memory banks, that sounds right. So, last player we're going to be talking about here is safety Kevin Byard of Chicago Bears. Has played quite well. That veteran in the backfield. That I don't know. Who knows? I'm thinking he's a captain, but maybe he's not. Maybe that's wrong of me to say. But he's got to have some veteran leadership for that team, which is really spiraling. The team is kind of the Chicago Bears have really been going down the tubes here these past 3 weeks. But he had 11 total tackles, 6 assisted, 5 solo. Has had really, 2 back-to-back weeks that have done quite well. It's interesting because obviously he was, a menace to be reckoned with when he was in Tennessee. When he was a Tennessee Titan. Ended up going to the Philadelphia Eagles. It looked like he was absolutely washed. And since then, he's actually done quite well in Chicago. I was not expecting that. Also had a pass deflection this week, only rostered in 58% of leagues. So, being a little bit higher roster percentage. So what are your thoughts on Kevin Byard, Joe? I mean, he does have some interesting matchups coming up. He's got Minnesota at Detroit. Actually, he's got Minnesota and Detroit twice. And so it should be interesting what happens here with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as they, got the divisional matchups coming up, like you mentioned. But I think he's definitely a guy that I'd be I think he's worth the ad. He's gotten a decent amount of tackle numbers, and if you're like us that scores highly, if he gets a pick or pass deflection, his tackle numbers are always there. So he's at least got you a solid floor. And then if he happens to get a pass deflection or even get an interception, he's going to, put you over the top and have a nice ceiling week for you.
And what is it with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Chicago Bears scheduling? They have not played the Packers, the Lions, or the Vikings at all. They're going to be playing all 6 games the rest of the way. I don't know what happened there with the schedule makers.
Yeah, I don't know, but they're certainly not doing these teams any favors. I mean, it's tough to, play the divisional foes already twice a year, but especially when you get those quick turnarounds, I feel like that's even tougher.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about 5 players that you should go ahead and check out that waiver wire, see if you can't add them to help your roster. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.